Hey, I'm Brian Bloy. I am the Vice President of Strategies and Development for the Send Network, as well as the Senior Pastor of Westridge Church in Dallas, Georgia. And I'm so excited to be joined by some great friends of mine today. We're going to be talking about mobilizing church planting teams to join in God's kingdom activity. And it's so good to have Vance Pittman, who is the president of Send Network, next to me. And then Rivers Parton, who is the lead planter spouse for spouse development, and I love that. And then my man Teddy Johnson, who is the director of worship development. Hey, let's just jump right into this topic right now. Vance, I'm going to start with you. Would you just explain to us the necessity of church planting teams and why you're excited about it?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been saying since I came to lead Send Network is one of the issues we have to address in North American church planting is a return to biblical missiology. Like the Bible gives us a prescription for how to engage in church planting. Paul is the greatest church planter in the New Testament, and everywhere you read the name Paul in the New Testament, the next word is almost always "and," because Paul never planted a church by himself. It was always Paul and Silas, or Paul and Timothy, or Paul and a list of people, men and women who made up that church planting team. So I think a biblical missiology is about sending church planting teams. We focus too much on just sending a planter pastor, but not understanding that there has to be a team around that planter pastor that's a missionary team to go engage that city with the gospel. So I think it's a return to biblical missiology. It's not a new strategy. It's what the New Testament did. And the more we align ourselves with a missiology that follows the pattern of Scripture, the more we see the fruit of God's kingdom being expanded.
Yeah, so good. Rivers, so you play a huge role in all of this. And there are a lot of important conversations going on this week at the convention.
Really?
All about gender, believe it or not, all about gender roles in the local church. And so regardless of what decisions are made, here's what we know. We know that the role of women is indispensable in church planting. And so just share with us some ways that women participate as members of church planting teams, just including some very unique ways that women have to play a very distinct role. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's actually two really unique and really strategic reasons to be very intentional to have women as a part of your church planting team. The first one I would say is multiplication. If you think about the concept of sharing, actually aid organizations have done research to what would be the best bang for their buck, we would say, in microfinancing throughout the world to impact education, poverty alleviation, and they've actually discovered that the impact on those issues when they give microloans to women are far greater than when they give microloans to men. Sorry, my friends. Not that those impacts aren't great, but they are greater. Women tend to share with people around them.
Yeah.
If they find the best taco in town, they're telling everybody they know. If they find the best pediatrician, they're telling everybody they know. And when women find the good news of Jesus, they tell everybody they know.
So
and
good.
one great biblical example from that is the woman at the well. I mean, she went straight to town and told everybody she knew. She wasn't ashamed of why she was there in the middle of the day. She told everybody about the good news of Jesus. And so that's the first, I think, most unique and strategic reason. And then the second reason, I think, is the important role that social spaces play in evangelism today. I think when we are trying to reach an uninterested world, social spaces really play an important role in us being able to share our faith. And women tend to gather people in those spaces for dessert, dinner, hanging out, doing something together, vacationing together. All of those spaces, women have huge impacts, and there are huge implications on evangelism because of that.
Yeah, that is so good.
I would just add to that, Brian. I mean, what she just said is 1,000% true. But as I mentioned, we're trying to return to a biblical missiology. Paul's team had men and women on that team. Jesus' ministry team, men and women on that team. You see throughout the pattern of the New Testament, both men and women engaged in the mission of God. So it's mission critical that we unleash and mobilize the whole church with the whole gospel for the whole mission.
Yeah, that's right. If you're looking at your context, you want to have people representing your context on your church planting team, and women make up 50% of all context. And so it's really strategic, it's really wise. I also just heard, I think this is so interesting, in the women's ministry luncheon, that women control 67% of the world's wealth. And so, I mean, every church planter needs a good funded team. So, I mean, there's that too.
Women control more than 67% of my wealth. I can assure you of that.
That's good.
It's good.
Listen, Rivers, I want to tell you, I know you just stepped into this role, and I mean, we are so glad that you are in this role. You are the right person for this team.
Thanks, Brian.
And we're so grateful
Thank
for you.
It's really
Yeah, we're really
encouraging.
Okay, before I introduce Teddy, tell me how excited you are to have Teddy Johnson
Listen,
on our team, Vance.
Teddy Johnson and I have been serving together for almost 2 decades. God's got a sense of humor to put a white kid from small town Alabama, black kid from inner city Camden, New Jersey together in Vegas. And the thought that Teddy Johnson is sitting on the Cooperative Program Executive Committee stage is just awesome to me. So I'm thrilled about this next question.
Yeah. Teddy, we're just seriously, like you, I've told you this before, you're one of my favorite people in the whole world. And we're just so honored to have you part of our team. So here's a question. As we send out church planting teams to engage the city with the gospel, to make disciples, and to plant churches, all sorts of people are going to be reached in all of that. And I love this quote from Vance. Vance says, the gospel doesn't skip over people. So that being true, Teddy, talk to us about the importance of just worship culture and the role that the worship leader plays on a church planting team.
So the worship leader is often, in many contexts, considered, or at least given the role of a song leader. And that's very different. Worship is much more than a song. And worship leaders need to understand that their role is not just putting together song lists or trying to put together some amazing, innovative weekend experience. The primary role of a worship leader is discipleship.
That's good.
There has to be this understanding that worship leaders have. We have to be mindful that we are literally putting words into the mouths of people that are shaping and informing their understanding of who God is. And that can literally transform their lives. That's transformative. It can redirect the trajectory of their lives. And so there has to be just this embracing of understanding that we are practicing God's presence and what worship really is beyond the song.
And listen, as somebody who watched him lead for 2 decades, his primary aim was to disciple and raise up others. Like Teddy won't say this about himself, but he's one of the most talented, gifted worship leaders you'll ever be around. And yet I was always having to make him lead songs because he was so committed to raising up other people. We'd go 2 or 3 weeks and he's not leading a song. And I'm like, dude, you got to lead some songs here because you're so gifted to do this. But he so believes that what he said is true, that it's really about raising up other people to be worship leaders, and I've just so appreciated the humility of that from him for a long time.
And I appreciate that as well about him. And I've known you now for a few years, and I wish people could be in our worship gatherings, not just at the Send Network gatherings, but like in our orientations. The worship is powerful. And Teddy, I just want to say thank you. I'm so excited to have you part of our team. So, Vance, last question. You and I.
Before you ask the last one,
Sure.
I know because we got a couple minutes here. Teddy, just tell him just a minute about why, because what he talked about with that question was the gospel doesn't skip over people. Like when you engage a city with the gospel, the church should be a reflection of the community. And we had to lead a multi-ethnic church in that context of worship. So what does that look like, leading in a multi-ethnic context as it pertains to worship? What are some lessons you'd share?
Well, I've heard Vance say many, many times that by the year 2044, demographers have projected that this country will be a minority
Majority.
nation. Majority, yeah. So as a result of that, we've got to kind of be prepared for what is to come. And there is a desire in my heart, as now the director of worship development in the Send Network, to have this heartbeat that looks toward helping churches get back to the gospel.
That's good.
And by saying that, what I mean is that we need to eradicate this Americanized ideology or version of Christian worship that has led to our Sunday morning services being the most segregated hour of the week.
That's a good word.
And so there needs to be a variety of songs. There needs to be a variety of types of songs. There needs to be an inclusion of different cultures so that we're not just multicolored, but we're truly multicultural.
That's a great word. Good word. That's a good word. Thank you, Teddy. So one of the things that you and I are super excited about together is co-vocational church planting.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, co-vocational church planting and church planting teams, they're just inseparable. So,
Yeah.
Vance, just can you explain co-vocational church planting? Because I know for a lot of people, they've never heard that phrase before. And why do you believe that is so important to the future of church planting in North America?
Yeah, my prayer is that a decade from now, when people think about Sin Network, they think about a few things. One of them is that wherever you see a Sin Network church, you know they pray, they preach the Word of God, and they are seeking to take the gospel to the nations. Another is that we're known for the mobilization of church planting teams that include both the mobilization of women, but also co-vocational leadership. So the two terms that people use are bivocational and co-vocational. Bivocational people are who are in ministry or in church planting, and they have another job, but one day they hope the church grows to the point that they won't have to work that job anymore. They'll be able to be full-time employed by the church. Co-vocational is different. Paul, in the New Testament, was co-vocational. He was a tent maker by trade. He never chose to give up tent making. That was the way he fueled and funded his ministry. Co-vocational are people who've chosen a career path that they can leverage for the sake of the gospel. There's not enough money on planet Earth for us to fully fund all the missionaries that need to be sent to North America to plant churches. We have to unleash the church so that co-vocational leaders understand, if I'm a doctor, I'm a school teacher, I'm a contractor, I'm a business person, I can take my job, move to another city, and leverage that job for the sake of the gospel. I'll give you an example, because some people hear that and they think, well, that means you're talking about house churches or organic churches, but that's not true. We have a church planter that planted years ago in San Diego, and he's a fire captain of a fire station in downtown San Diego in the Gaslamp District. He's a full-time employed fire captain by the San Diego Fire Department. God called him to plant a church. He didn't stop being a fire captain. He planted a church that now is a church of about 500 to 700 people. It has a staff. It has a building. It looks like a traditional church, but all of their staff are co-vocational. Nobody's fully paid by the church. They're all using their job, their skill, and their passion and leveraging that for the sake of the expansion of the gospel. Can everybody do that? No, but a lot of people can do that. And there's some contexts in North America like Manhattan or Seattle or San Francisco where the cost of parachuting in a full-time church planter is next to impossible, but somebody that has a career that can be leveraged for the sake of the gospel. And not only that, in a lot of, we're talking about church planting teams, yeah, maybe we send a full-time planter and his spouse to go, but we need a team of people around them that are going to be co-vocational, pharmacists and school teachers who will go and be missionaries in the city. When we planted Hope Church in Las Vegas, we took 3 guys full-time, but then we also took 13 families who were co-vocational. They had a job. They got a job in Las Vegas, they bought homes, and they lived as missionaries in our context. So I think a future wave of the church planting movement in North America is going to be teams filled with co-vocational leaders. So if you're listening to this and you're watching and you got a job, here's what I'm challenging you to do. Go do that job somewhere where a church is being planted and leverage your job, skill, and passion where you live, work, and play for the expansion of His kingdom.
This falls under my area. One of the guys on our team, Brad Briscoe, is really kind of the genius behind all of this. So
he kind of coined the term co-vocation.
He did, and he's just this brilliant mind that we're just lucky to have on our team. And so I would just say this: if that's something, if you're a pastor and you're just like this could be a whole new way for us to plant churches, or if you're somebody who's watching this and you're in a job and you're like, I want to stay in my job, but use this to launch a church. I want you to reach out to my office or reach out to Brad Briscoe. We would love to connect you with this, all the co-vocational stuff that we're working on right now, because I'm super excited. I know we all are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Rivers,
I was just going to say, or if you're a woman and you think, I want to be a part of church
Absolutely.
planting and I'm not sure where I fit,
Yep.
this is where you fit, as serving on a church planting team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know Teddy.
Same thing applies with music. Same
Yeah.
thing applies with the musicians and the vocalists, just giving their time and their talents and not doing it to get a paycheck,
Yeah,
but doing it
absolutely.
because you're called to do it and doing it because God has given you the skill and the gift. And if He chooses to provide for you that way, then so be it. But this is not something that we're doing for the money. We're doing it for the glory of God.
Amen. Hey, thank you for joining us today. This has been an exciting topic, and thanks so much.